I built this patio stone lifting contraption a couple of months ago, but I hadn't taken the time yet to redo the patio, and now it was time to start doing it. The patio stone lifter is actually sort of a giant wooden suction cup with a garbage bag over top of it, which gets pulled down onto the concrete to seal around the edges. Of course, this doesn't make a perfect seal, but the vacuum continuously pulls on it, and that makes for enough vacuum between the plywood and the patio stone that I'm able to lift a quite heavy patio stone out of where it is, even if it's stuck in there a little bit. Time to shovel out what was between the patio stones. That seemed to have turned into quite fertile soil. I'm adding crushed rock to bring the level up a bit, because the whole patio had sagged down quite a bit towards the house. Now, where the pile of crushed rock was that I couldn't get to it with a wheelbarrow, so I had to carry the first bit with buckets, and I figured I'd use this strap as sort of an improvised yoke, and that worked fairly well. And checking the level against the more central part of the patio, and then the slope of it here, and then compacting it down a bit just by stomping on it. I still needed more rocks. And then I figured carrying the buckets of rocks to the wheelbarrow and dumping it in there was actually a lot easier, because then I could at least use the wheelbarrow for the rest of the way. And time for more adjustments, this time trying to make sure it's actually fairly flat and at the right slope, because I want to make the patio guide the water away from the house a bit. We've had some water coming into the basement just below that patio. And putting down some 6mm plastic to go underneath the patio stones near the house. So hopefully that, combined with the slope away from the house, will guide the water away from the house before it seeps into the ground. Oops, I broke apart one of my spacer blocks and then got it jammed between the patio stones. This is more how I meant those spacers to actually be used. I had to sweep the soil off the edges of every patio stone before putting it back in, because I sure didn't want to put them in there with all that soil on them. I'm banging the patio stone down a few times before finally placing it, just to help compact the soil to conform to the patio stone itself. And those plastic strips you see there, the idea is those go underneath the joints. That still allows for lots of water drainage on the patio, but it'll make a longer path for the weeds to get down to soil below all the gravel, and hopefully that'll suppress the weeds for a little bit longer. Is it a good idea? I don't know. We'll know in a few years' time. As I move on, I'm starting to see more of a sand as opposed to crushed rock. So I think what happened is when they redid the weeping tile of the house, this part and this part of the patio got lifted up and crushed rock put in, whereas this stuff is still the original. But looking here, this is the part I've redone, and this is how it was. So there was quite a bit of settling that happened after they dug this up, which is where I'm putting all these extra rocks in. For the rest of it though, I'm just gonna follow the old contours of what it is, because that would take an awful lot of crushed rock to bring it all level. It's 2 weeks since I started redoing this patio, and I'm getting close to done, but I'm taking my time, and this is why I don't like renting equipment, because that would get expensive. One thing that impresses me about crushed rock actually is how much more stable it is than sand. So I added quite a bit of crushed rock right here to fill that up, because this had sagged a bit, and I don't make footprints in there stepping in it, whereas here, every time I step on it, it moves. So crushed rock is a lot more stable than sand. Also, these ones are just over half the size of a regular patio stone. And boy, I hate moving those because I can't pick those up with my lifter, and man, it hurts the back. I just wish these were whole patio stones, so I can't imagine doing the patio without having my patio stone lifter contraption, which is still holding up. It still amazes me every time I do it how well it will just pick up an ingrown patio stone like this. Lifting out the last patio stone. The end is in sight. Got 9 stones placed today, 10 left to go, and it's getting hot, so I'll call it a day for today. That was the last one in. I think some of those patio stones I may still pick up and level a bit more, but maybe I should wait for it to settle a bit more. Now my patio stone lifter contraption, which I made a whole video about, hasn't been working as well as it used to, and I thought maybe this garbage bag for my seal is done. But then just looking under it, I noticed there's these strips of wood all around the edges, and this one is missing, so there's a good 4mm gap that this plastic has to cover, and it doesn't seal that well over that. So that was my loss of suction, and sometimes it just drops the stone, so I should glue that back on. But I will dismantle this thing, but I'll keep the parts so that I can put it back together, because I figure in a season or two's time some of these stones will probably have settled and I'll want to re-level some of them. I like to look at the gaps between the patio stones, but I realized they'd eventually fill with leaves and other organic crap, which would turn into nice soil for weeds, so I decided to fill those gaps with small rocks. Ideally I would have had some sand with relatively large grains so it drains easily, but the closest I could find was something called crusher dust, but that has actually a lot of stone dust in it, so I sieved that out. And after that I sieved out the largest stones because it was a little bit too coarse for what I needed. I started out by just trying to sweep it across into the cracks, but it was actually easier to just pour it into the cracks first and then sweep off the excess. And it's a few days later and I already see pine needles that have gotten blown into some of these cracks, so I'm sure glad I filled those with stones. So now the question is, how long will it stay looking nice? It took 4 years to get this full of weeds. Hopefully it'll take longer this time.